Tonight's quick tip is being filmed deep inside a dark cave. No, sorry, that's not true. It is being filmed with a camera that hasn't been set to properly expose for the video that I'm shooting. I'm going to walk you through this very quick because it is a quick tip. I have covered exposure in other videos. I've covered setting movie exposures in other videos, but I want to specifically walk through the 3 settings I'm going to use tonight to get a properly exposed video of me sitting here in front of the camera in a well-lit room. Now, first thing I do whenever I'm about to shoot a video is turn my dial to M. It's usually on M, but let's say I was putting it on something else for a moment. I turn it on M, and my shutter speed, my aperture, and my ISO could be all over the place. Maybe I just came in from outside shooting under bright sunlight conditions, and my shutter speed is 1/1000th of a second, my aperture is 6.3, and my ISO is 100. That's not an appropriate setting. Those are not appropriate settings for indoors under artificial lighting. Way too dark. As you're seeing, you can barely, if at all, see me. Now, when I shoot my movies, I almost always shoot at 1080p, 24 frames per second. The rule of thumb is if you shoot at 24 frames per second, or whatever your frame rate is, you should double it to get your shutter speed. So the first thing I'm going to do, because I'm shooting at 24 frames per second and I'm going to follow that rule of thumb, is set my shutter speed at 1/50th of a second. I'm using the DSLR controller, so I just was able to make that change while I'm talking to you here in front of the camera. And now you maybe have just a glimpse of me. Next setting is aperture. You could change ISO next, but I don't want to do that. I want to change my aperture now because I have an idea of how much should be in focus behind me in this video. And in this case, it really doesn't need to be in focus, so I'm going to open it up as, to a fairly wide aperture. Let's pretend that I have the kit lens on the T4i, and if I was at 50, I could go to about 5.0. And you can see that it got a little bit brighter, just a little bit. Now, the last setting I have available to me to change is ISO. So I'm going to change my ISO and I'm going to go up to, let's jump up to ISO 1600. And you can see that that's a little too bright. So I'm going to come down to ISO 800. And that looks pretty nice. So first I followed the rule of thumb. My shutter speed needed to be set at twice my frame rate. That gave me 1/50th of a second. There was really no thinking there. Just did it. Next was aperture. There was a little bit more thinking there. Did I want stuff in the background to be in focus? Nah, I didn't really care. What focal length was I shooting at? How low an aperture could I go? In this case, it was f5. So I went as low as I could go because I didn't care if things were in the back were in focus, and I wanted to let in as much light as possible. And then I just started to increase my ISO until I got to something that looked good. Actually, I jumped up, decided that was a little too bright, and came back down to ISO 800. So that's how I set my exposure for videos every single time I film a video. Always start at 1/50th of a second, then adjust my aperture, and then adjust my ISO. Now that we covered that, and I talked about that rule of thumb, I will tell you that I do know of some professional videographers that are moving away from that careful 2 times the frame rate. I too have occasionally allowed my shutter speed to go above or below, but I know some that vary it widely, and I don't really notice a difference. So you can adjust it. But if you want to be a stickler and you want to go by the rule of thumb that should give you the most cinematic look, then your shutter speed should be twice the frame rate. And so if you were shooting at 60 frames per second, your shutter speed should be 1/120th of a second. All right, so I hope this was helpful setting your video exposure. And if you have questions about this, or there's other topics you'd like to see covered in one of these quick videos, just leave a comment down below or come over and find me on Facebook. Thanks so much for watching, and please subscribe.